And maybe we can just start at the very beginning. This was your graduation film. I believe it's also your first feature. Is that
Yes.
correct? And maybe I could just ask you about the genesis of this project, how this came to be your first feature. Maybe we start right at the beginning, and where does this film come from?
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for this event that is possible, and it's possible to screen the film. And I'm so sad that I cannot be there. But yeah, luckily we can still talk. Yeah, at the beginning, I mean, this film has a very strange genesis, or how it came to life, because when we started to work on it three years ago, the general public was not very familiar with the issues around working migration and labor and exploitation structures of it in Germany, specifically in German meat production, but also in other branches, in other industries. So there was a lot of talking and explication on our side, and this also the question of invisibility of these people who were employed in the factories and coming to Germany to work was a very important element for us. And so this invisibility became kind of the topic, and also the discourse in the public institutions. So it became kind of the focus of the film. And after the film was finished and premiered in January this year, there was several months later, there was a huge scandal in Germany, and information on the situation of the migrants and the infections with COVID. And there was a huge scandal with the infections in meat production factories. So the news about these issues and the situations were all of a sudden all over the place in the public, which made it complete, like the situation and the discourse also completely different. So I think for us, it's very strange, but also very exciting to enter this very different arena of public discussion.
Can everyone hear okay, more or less? Yeah? Cool. Thank you. I mean, at the core of the film, I mean, the film is so dense with ideas. I think in a less ambitious filmmaker's hands, you probably have about 4 different films in there as the capacity, whether we're following the workers themselves, or Inga, your protagonist, or telling the story of the lady who is forced due to her conditions to abandon her child. And the way all these things merge together is a real triumph within the film in terms of building its argument. But at the core of the film, perhaps we have this binary between the students performing Brecht's St. Joan of the Stockyards, and also your own personal investigation into the plight of the migrant workers at the Tonnes meatpacking plant. And I'd just like to ask you to elaborate more on this binary, and also to ask you which came first, actually, for you, this desire to investigate these specific workers or the Brecht play, because the complements and mirroring is quite astonishing throughout the film.
Yeah, thank you. First was definitely the situation of working migration, and just the realities of work and life of these people coming to Germany, and this idea of the European Union and also Germany being kind of this legal framework within certain things just don't happen. I think there is this kind of narrative and idea that societies that are well off have and share, think like this is the territory where these things don't happen. And specifically within this the union of nations that kind of has a certain common ground and common basis. So so this was the beginning, the first idea to look into that, how people what do they expect when they come, and what are they confronted with. And then when we started researching and meeting people and talking to them, we realized how many things are just closed and not accessible and not visible. And this the strong difficulty of certain public institutions to just find any words for that, and just to elaborate, just to name the problem, basically. And so this struggle with this discursive struggle kind of led to this parallel narration. Since we were thinking, I mean, I'm very fascinated with school theater as an environment, because I think it's I was thrilled when I was at school myself, and I thought this is a very interesting place when you're growing up and you're exchanging ideas, and you're becoming, I don't know, a political subject. So so we thought maybe this is a good idea to have a cinematic form for this parallel worlds that coexist and are not just, there is no point of where they can touch and confront each other, and also why it is so hard to understand what's actually happening there and going on. And so I was just then rereading the play, and it was just so close to the reality. So we thought we should give it a try. But it wasn't, like in a very experimental, let's say, setup.
So you approached a school to catalyze the event of the rehearsal of this play, and yourself as part of the production.
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions they want to fold in at all, or comments? If you do, don't hesitate to wave. But I'd like to maybe talk a little bit more about this duality again, because I think what's so interesting about the play within the film, I guess we should call it, or could call it, is how the students, on one hand, by rehearsing and commenting on the film, they act as the film's chorus, maybe, in a kind of, in a dramatic sense. But the students also become subjects within the film. And the camera is looking at them. And between these two stories, we have a tale of migrant workers very much trapped in a capitalist reality, and then a set of students who also have the freedom, comparatively, to be able to pursue a text that's critical of the circumstances that I guess have afforded them the security that they possess in society. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about these two paths as two kinds of subjects, I guess, within the film as well.
I think it's very interesting because in the beginning, I think the concept was more like having the school play, like we would say a Rahmenhandlung, so like a framework that is kind of a commentary within the film that is maybe explaining sometimes things or is commenting. And I think during the process of the filming, because we started filming with the students first for organizational reasons, I think it would have been much easier the other way around, but we first filmed the students. And so they kind of maybe in a certain way took over or grew out of this kind of commentary or like this functional role that was supposed to explain or comment things, but they became equal protagonists. So as you were saying, on the one hand, they're the chorus, so obviously it's like they're mirroring certain things, and also maybe for certain audiences in Germany, it's definitely like there is a mirroring process. This is what we've been told in the last, like over the last screenings, that you kind of can relate to this helplessness, certain helplessness that they experience. And at the same time, it's not explanatory, or it's not an illustration. And because there sometimes there were questions if Inge is sort of like this equivalent of Saint Joan in the play. And I mean, I wouldn't say so. And I really like that there is this gap. I mean, there is a very clear the same claims, or the same, how you say, the same problems that are named and issues raised, but there are also they were also very, very different, and you cannot read it as one to one, and you cannot say Inge is the Saint Joan who is failing in her mission. And so also the students, they're trying, and they're really, in a way, making the effort they can make, but they're also kind of, I would say, trapped in this in the school system where you have you need to produce certain qualities, or I don't know, certain certain things, and other things like critical thinking is less asked for, maybe. Yeah.
And I think, again, that's one of the things that the film does so well in terms of allowing for these gaps, in essence, by so forcefully placing things side by side, but knowing that there's always a distance between them. And I think it ends up, so much happens through inference within the film, and it's very impressive. And through that, I'd then like to ask you then, maybe with a film that's as precise in some ways, but so willing to be loose in others as yours, to what extent did you discover the film was the film discovered in the editing process, or did you work with a really tight screenplay or storyboard? Because I ask that because, again, at the end, we're left with such a carefully calibrated artifact. And I'm curious as to how the film got to that final form.
Yeah, I mean, the editing process was very, very much important, and I'm very glad that Wouter Alves, the editor, and myself, we had this very, I think, close vision of how, when the distance needs to be very little and when it needs to grow between the two parts. But we did find this out in the process, because I knew that there are certain narrative stops, maybe in the play, where the play will touch the real, certain, like the story of the man that you hear in the beginning of the film with the deadly accident. And there is this exact, like, very similar scene that Brecht is describing with the man who's dies in a similar way. So these things that kind of echo, or also the critique of the church and of the religious institutions. So these things, we knew they will probably echo, but we didn't know in which way. And also the story with a woman who had to abandon her child, or found herself in a situation abandoning her child. We didn't know until the end if it would have been possible to have her in the film and for her to appear. But we knew that the students will read her story and that they will discuss it. So we had this very intuitive and associative and heterogeneous, maybe, material that we tried to organize during the editing process, and to see where it needed this confrontation, and where it really needed to give some space and some distance for the audience to breathe, because I think it often gets very, very moralistic and very clear, like things that have a social critical stance, and that are very clear on what is good and what is bad, and who is responsible. So we were trying to also let this film breathe a bit.
Does anyone have anything? Yes, there's two. Great. I'm just to let you know, Julia, and the audience as well, because of the microphone setup, if you shout at me, I will then transfer. Okay. So the question is, the lady in the audience noticed that you had, who was it in the credits, sorry? Oh, legal advisor. Sorry, that's what it was. I thought it was a name. So the question then goes on from that to ask whether you've had problems with the industry itself, with Tonys, the company as well, whether they've responded publicly or privately to you about the film to develop that. Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very on like the industry scale. It's a very small film. It's a graduation film, so we had a very little team, and it's a young production company with whom I studied with and worked with. So we really didn't have any, like, no real money for legal for like serious legal backup. And so we try to be careful and not to enter too dangerous spheres in order not to get sued for certain things, because it does happen to a lot of people, and it also happens to our protagonists, that they get sued, not for the things they say in the film, but when they act in public and say like on other media. It already happened a few times. So we didn't have legal problems yet, and I hope it will stay this way. But we know that yeah, the like Tönnies, or they definitely, the company did realize that there is this this film, and the film won some prizes, so it had some kind of attention, and so they reached out and they said that they congratulated and to the film and were interested to see it. But then, yeah, the lockdown came, so it was really complicated in Germany, and to have these big public screenings and debates. I would be still interested generally to have this kind of pluralist debate, also with the industry, who definitely is interested in this form of employment of people. So, but it's very complicated, and you need good partners for that, who organize, and cinemas who are also interested in this kind of, because it can be very confrontational, but yeah, generally I think it could be interesting, but it's, yeah, also sensitive. So yeah, so far no. And but and the other yeah, I mean, we also yeah, we're very careful with the use of the play, in order not to break any how do you call this, author rights, which is also a very sensitive topic. So yeah, there were some areas that were thin ice, but I think we moved around them.
And there was another question, I think, there. Yeah. So first, it's preceded by a comment that says, "Thank you very much." As a Portuguese gentleman in the audience watching the film, have part of a family of multinationals, he was saying, I think with great, you know, an awareness of these situations, and a father who also worked in not dissimilar conditions. He thanks you for the film, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay, so the question then is, observing that within the film, primarily the protagonists are treated or act in a positive way, and are treated in a positive way that's supportive towards the argument of the film itself, and kind of the damning of these labor practices and the kind of legal vacuum that you talk about within that. in the film. But then at one stage, the gentleman was saying, just after the, I think it's just after the meeting with the kind of what's it called, the body that's bringing people together into community conflict thing.
Yeah, integration.
Exactly.
Council. Yeah.
Inga has a conversation with a lady who says, all well and good, but the only way we can do this is if we, you know, pay more money, structure the society differently. The gentleman was suggesting that probably most of the audience will be very behind the critique that the film puts forward, but also asks you about whether you feel that a societal, how would we wrap up the end of the question? Yeah. 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 And to what extent there's also a part of the society that is very willing to tolerate this behavior with an awareness of the price tag that it comes with, I guess. And through that, I might just add on as well, my observation that at the film's very end, of course, the last words we hear on screen, cheap, cheap, cheap has a high price, you say basically. So this kind of to wrap up those two.
Wow. Yeah, it's a complicated question. I think I'm definitely with. I was about to say I'm definitely with Inge on this one when she says that for these forms of economic structures and employment and production forms need to be regulated from above, so politically regulated. But at the same time, this lady with whom she has this conversation, who says it needs to come from below. So, and I don't believe in this idea of because since now this topic is very present in the German media, and so the question of how regulated consumption can change something. So as how people. The general population, through the way we buy things, if we decide to only buy expensive meat and high or well-produced biological products, that through that we can regulate and force the companies to produce under better conditions. With this, I totally don't believe, and I think that the consumption debate is kind of shifting the focus from the idea that we are political subjects and first and not consumers. And so what we can do is to produce political pressure. So I think like this is my personal stance. But in order to produce a certain political pressure, we obviously need places for debates and to exchange ideas, and these places need to be alive in schools and maybe in religious institutions if we want. I mean, that's a whole different question, but in public institutions we need to, I think, regain or find again the way to like a language to call, like how we can address these problems, how we can call them, because obviously I think the ideas of Brecht became very, very strange for these young people who grow up in very well situated environments, and so they really cannot relate to this anymore, to the questions of class, and to just saying that something is like a Marxist idea or a communist idea, it provokes some kind of shiver. And I think this is, but this is just like on an impulsive level. And maybe the ideas behind them are not so strange to them if you get deeper into this. So I think it needs, more space and more possibilities to exchange and to listen, and to have this continuous talking about these problems, and then hopefully things can change.
Thank you. Another question from anyone here? then maybe I'd just like to reflect maybe on we haven't got so much time left, but just with this idea of wrapping up, I guess, or mirroring, I mean, actually, between the Brecht and the migrant worker issue at the heart of your film. Brecht's play, of course, was written just after the formerly biggest financial depression and crash of 1929. Right, or around and in response to this. And of course, your film is set in a present that's probably on the precipice of undergoing very dramatic economic turmoil at present. And there's the one scene with the lawyer from Tonnes as well, when he starts talking about automation. And I find it a quite fascinating moment in the film. You know, within Brecht, the spectre of Marx was maybe haunting Europe. And at that moment, it seems like the spectre of automation is haunting Europe as well. And it was just to talk a little bit more about mirroring, and again, that decision to, I guess, this idea of the film pointing towards the future as well, whilst dealing with something so concretely in the present as the labor issues at the moment. I want to talk about the film's relationship to looking backwards and forwards at the same time within that, if that makes any sense as a question.
Yeah, I think it is very interesting. Like a certain how do you say that, simultaneity of times, like of the past and the present and the future. I mean, it's maybe goes a little bit away from the scene with the lawyer, with the legal advisor, but I tried to come back there. But for me, for example, the scene of Inge, who is doing this walk and is recounting the story. There is the past that is kind of you can see the past happening in the present. And like her incorporating several people, like this woman that she was taking care of or supporting, and herself doing this walk. So I think this is very interesting, like a time dialogue within the film. And the Brecht obviously sets, on the one hand, also like a historical axis, or this historical mirroring, that on the one hand you can see how these things are not new anymore, and how maybe they became so strange and so far away from us, or at least the discourse about them. So so I think because these the problem is not, I mean, the discussion, like the German debate, I'm coming back to this, it's probably completely different situation in Portugal, but the German debate became so acute, at this very moment. It's so heated, and everyone just found out, like, oh, there's this huge problem, and we've been exploiting these people for years. How could this happen? And it's obvious how this could happen, and it's been happening for decades, and it's not like people really didn't know. And so I think, and the problem is that there is very for a very long time we cannot really look at these things because they are not in the lights. They're not, there is no, I don't know, like the media don't take care of them, so people don't know. And there all of a sudden there is this huge attention, and there is a scandal, and so things become visible, and then they disappear again. And so I think this intersection of different times kind of also maybe tries to bring some kind of continuity to I don't know, to the reflection on these problems. I don't know, I hope it's
no, definitely. Certainly. No, that's a great answer. And again, thank you so much for your film. That I think one thing film can do sometimes is both bridge that continuity, but also act as a glimmer of ongoing visibility as well. And I think your film certainly enables that, and for things to manifest on screen, and hopefully for the conversation to continue. But thank you so much for a film that's so intellectually and formally adventurous, and congratulations with new projects. Thank you for joining us on screen. And now we're going to have to wrap up, I'm afraid. But Julia, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.